greatest magicians know that magic only happens in that place between what an audience believes they see and what they truly see. The best reveals are the ones that no one sees coming. In 1927, Bernie Babcock believed in a brighter future for Arkansas. Her best trick was finding it in a gravel pit on Crowley's Ridge.
I still remember my very first magic show. I was a little boy at the county fair, and there alongside the midway, in the shadow of the Ferris wheel, was a colorful tent with a hand-painted banner on the front promising the grandest illusions from all around the world. Well, I paid my quarter, I stepped inside the tent, and I got to see my very first magic show. And in that show, the old magician showed me the very same trick that I'm about to show you now. Well, I'm Rocky Clements. All of my life since I was a kid, I've performed magic publicly and currently do about 40 or 50 shows a year around Arkansas and occasionally around the Mid-South. The very beginning of King Crowley probably starts in New York with a paper that was written that was very insulting to Southerners and to Arkansas in particular, claiming that we were all a bunch of hayseeds and uneducated, and that there was not one facility in the whole state of Arkansas that promoted art and culture. And so a lady in Little Rock who was about art and culture, named Bernie Babcock, took offense to the article, and she decided to set out and build a museum.
Well, Bernie Babcock was really a renowned author. She wrote a book, I think in 1919, called The Soul of Anne Rutledge. And that book established her as one of the experts in the country on Abraham Lincoln. It also, the book was nominated for a Nobel Prize and was turned into a play that was presented on Broadway. So Bernie was a big deal. And so she really worked to figure out what does it take for a place to be considered cultured. She had toured museums in New York, and she found that if you really wanted to be considered a cultured place, you needed to have a museum. So she came back here, and in 1927, she started a museum called the Arkansas Museum of History and Antiquities. And then King Crowley, which is really the most renowned piece in the original collection here, was sold by a man, and a jeweler and a metalsmith in the Jonesboro area, that he had found all these items that had been created by the Mayans back, you know, how many BC, I can't even say.
King Crowley was I guess you could say, invention of a rather, by all accounts, quirky, nearly deaf man named Dentler Rowland, who lived in Jonesboro back in the 19-teens and 20s and 30s. He was walking along a gravelly hillside south of town in Jonesboro and found what appeared to be a small petrified human foot. And curious as to if the rest of the body was underneath there, he started digging, and several feet down found several dozen stone pieces, the biggest of which was by all accounts, an approximately 12-inch square bust or head of a male. He offered those pieces to Bernie for her new museum, and for a sum of around $600, King Crowley went to Little Rock. Bernie brought in all of the local experts, and most all of them agreed that it was genuine, real, and the story spread literally coast to coast. The Smithsonian was called in to examine it, and on examination pretty quickly decided that it was not old and had been recently made and was all a hoax.
Bernie Babcock did not want to hear that for a long time. She was not willing to admit it was not real. You know, I think it was just, she didn't want to be delegitimized. It was, again, just wanting to not be shown to be inauthentic.
Rowland never really made the claims of the whole Aztec thing and all of that. He kind of, the story took wings of its own after it got to Little Rock.
I think it was big news when they thought it was what they thought it was, and then it became big news when they realized it wasn't what they thought it was. No, there were articles I read even as far north as all the way up to St. Louis. So yeah, it was kind of a big deal. Bernie retired along the way in her 80s, and the museum has kept going ever since. We're the oldest museum in the state of Arkansas, and our history now goes back 91, almost 92 years. We just had 162,000 people who came here in 2018, second biggest year in the history. So you know, we're serving almost 4 times as many people as we did just 20 years ago or so. It really owes to Bernie, and then Bernie brought King Crowley and those associated pieces. I mean, again, a little bit embarrassing to find out it wasn't what they thought it was, but it's still considered valuable art. It's just folk art, which has got is a whole genre is very important.
King Crowley was bought by a private collector whose name has pretty much been lost to history, and King Crowley has also, unfortunately, which probably is a good thing because it adds to the mystery. He almost certainly is still out there somewhere, but no one really knows where. Almost every magic trick works off of a ridiculously simple method. Often verbal misdirection can make the difference in whether or not it fools an audience. Dentler, he would have been a good magician. He really told very few lies in all of this. Everyone else decided the value of King Crowley and the history and the story. Dentler got it started and then let it go from there. The old magician didn't say any magic words at all this time, not one magic word. He simply said 1, 2, 3, and 4. The block was gone, it had vanished. He said what you just witnessed was merely an illusion. He said you only thought the block was in the box. It's actually been in the empty hat the entire time. And that, he said, is a trick worth your dollar, kid. The end.
Beliefs become much more powerful when they're shared. The people of the natural state wanted to believe in something special, and they found it in King Crowley. And like magic, a silly statue from a stonemason's bench became special and has continued to have an effect on Arkansas culture for over 100 years.